Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 4 of our poetry writing. So this week so far, you've already heard 3 poems. You've heard Feeling Ill, Lullaby, and Lawnmower. And today we're going to start off by reviewing those 3 poems. So we're going to review just by reading from left to right. The only reason I color coordinated them was just so that they wouldn't get confusing as you read. So I'm going to read them out loud. I'm going to go through a little quicker than I normally would, and what I want you to notice is that some poems have words that rhyme, right, and some don't. So I want you to try to figure out which of these poems have words that rhyme. All right, so we're going to start with Feeling Ill. Lying in the middle of the bed, waiting for the clock to change, flicking my toes on the sheets, watching an airplane cross the window, staring at the glare of the light, smelling the orange on the table, counting the flowers on the curtain, holding my head with my hand, hearing the steps on the stairs, lying in the middle of the bed, waiting for the clock to change. I just noticed I forgot to change that typo again. It still says sitars, stairs. Next is Lullaby. Tree sighs softly as the birds patter about, her heavy old branches settling down, tucking their heads beneath their wings. She waits until dusk has shadowed her leaves, and when she's sure she's heard that last soft cheep, she rocks her birds to sleep. And the last one that we have is Lawnmower. The lawnmower grinds its teeth in the grass, spitting out a thick green spray. Its head is too full of iron and oil to know what it throws away. The lawn's whole crop of chopped, soft, delicious green hay. So my video kind of covers that portion up. So which one of these poems, or multiple, have rhyming words? I want you to think about that for a moment. Which of these poems have words that rhyme? So Lullaby has words that rhyme, like cheap and sleep, and Lawnmower also has words that rhyme, like spray, away, and hay. But Feeling Ill doesn't have any words that rhyme. So some people think that, like some of your misconceptions might be that poems have to rhyme. If I write a poem, it must rhyme. It's not true. Some poems rhyme, and some poems do not. So I'm going to add to our notes about poems, right? We already have poems have sensory details that help us see, hear, smell, taste, and feel what's happening. But I added some poems rhyme, and I added and some do not. And then I also added that some poems have short lines. So today when we listen to the next poem, I want you to keep these things in mind. I especially want you to listen for rhymes, because that's what we're focusing on right now. We also have on the list poems can be about anything. You can write about an object as if it were a person, like personification. Now we're going to read the poem Windy Nights. And while we read this poem, I want you to close your eyes, and I actually want you to close them. I know it might feel silly. Close your eyes. All the way. Nothing's going to happen. I'm not going to jump out of your screen while your eyes are closed, so keep them closed. And I want you to really work on using your imagination to create an image in your head of what is happening in this poem. So this poem's by a person named Rodney Bennett, okay? I'm only going to read it once out loud, and then after that, you'll get to pause the video and read it on your own, okay? Windy nights, rumbling in the chimneys, rattling at the doors, round the roofs and round the roads, the rude wind roars, raging through the darkness, raving through the trees, racing off again across the great gray seas. You can open your eyes. So, I have another typo. But I can't edit it while I'm recording. So, roods is actually roofs, like a roof on a house. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to read the poem once through by yourself. Now that you've read the poem by yourself, I want you to think about this. What do you notice about how this poet writes about the wind? Specifically about the wind, what do you notice? You can pause and think. Now that you've had time to think, what do we notice about how this poet writes about the wind? You might have thought he writes about the wind as if it were alive, or he says that the wind is rude. Usually you only call a person rude, right? Not the wind. And he uses the word racing, and that might make you think of someone who's running. So now we're going to read the poem together out loud. So I know it might feel silly when you're sitting at home in front of your computer, but read the poem out loud with me. And remember, rudes is roofs. Just trying to make sure you're paying attention here. Totally purposeful typo. Windy nights, all together. Rumbling in the chimneys, rattling at the doors, round the roofs and round the roads, the rude wind roars, raging through the darkness, raving through the trees, racing off again across the great gray seas. I want you to pause and think. What rhyming words do you notice in this poem? What sound at the beginning of the words do you notice over and over again in this poem? And why do you think the poet included so many words that have all the sounds in this poem? So go ahead and pause. Maybe something that you noticed was that the second and the fourth lines rhyme with each other. For example, doors and roars, or trees and seas. You also might have noticed that all the sounds make you feel like the wind is blowing really hard and tearing everything up. So that's something that's called alliteration. Say it with me. Alliteration. And poets do that to make poems sound like what they're actually about. So the R sounds are meant to make you kind of have that feeling in your, like when you hear the it's kind of like that sound of the wind going through your ears, but doing it with the words. So I'm going to add to our notes about poems. Poems can be about anything. We have that. We have our note about personification. But now we have repetition of beginning sounds, which is what we learned was called alliteration. Now I want you to pause and think. If you were going to write a poem like Windy Nights about another kind of weather, what kind of weather might you choose to write about? Go ahead and pause and think about what you might write about. Some examples that you may have come up with, and obviously there are many more, but these are just some possible examples if you were having a hard time coming up with something. You might have had rain. Maybe you had snow. Maybe you had tornadoes, a hot sunny day, foggy days, or maybe even snowy nights. All of these are things that you could write a poem about if you were to model a poem after Windy Nights. Now it's time for quick write. So I want you to open up to a blank page or, a blank half a page in your notebook. Maybe you're using your computer and you want to open up that new document. We're going to do our quick write. And I want you to think for a moment before you write. What kind of sensory details might you use to describe the type of weather that you're planning on explaining? And then I also want you to think how you might use personification to write about this type of weather as if it were a person, right? Personification. So think about that for a moment. Maybe if you were going to use the rain for your example, you would use the words like splash and slosh and pitter-patter. Or maybe if you were going to write about a tornado, you would write about how it tears up everything in its path, right? So those are my two examples. Now for your quick write, I want you to look at the timer or your watch or whatever you're using to keep your time. And for 5 minutes, I want you to write about the type of weather that you chose, and then use sensory details and personification. This might look like bullet points, right? It doesn't have to be written in poem form. You might just be writing words that you want to use and putting each word on a new line. You might be writing bullet points like splash, slosh, pitter-patter. Or you might write a whole phrase that you know, like the raging tornado tore up the entire street in its path, right? So this is totally up to you. It's just to get your mind and your imagination to start kicking into gear, okay? So quick write for 5 minutes. Go ahead and pause this video, and then when we come back, you will move on to the independent writing time. Now it's time for writing time. Now that you've gotten your mind ready by doing your quick write, now it's time for your 20 to 30 minute writing time. So I want you to be in a space where you feel that you can truly concentrate and be undisturbed for about 20 to 30 minutes. Okay? So you're going to have your timer ready. You know the drill, the same way it's in class. We all go and we sit back at our seats and we really focus in on our work, okay? So the first thing you're going to write about during writing time today is to continue what you started during the quick write. You can turn those words and phrases into a poem now. Now, if that doesn't take you the full 20 to 30 minutes, then you can choose one of these options until those 20 or 30 minutes are up. So your options are to write another poem about the weather, write a poem about a feeling, write a poem about another object, or free write a poem about really anything that you choose. So my recommendation for you is to keep this screen up for the 20 to 30 minutes so that you can be reminded of the expectations as you write. All right, when your timer goes off, then you're done for the day. All right, get started. I hope you enjoyed today's writing, and I hope that you're still sharing with each other, or maybe on a phone call or a Zoom call to share your writing with your classmates or your family members, because I know that you're all such wonderful writers, and I really miss reading all of your creativity and all the things that your minds come up with. All right, happy writing.